Welcome to this video on multi-step word problem strategy. So multi-step word problem strategy is really not that much different than regular word problem strategy. We just need to be focused on looking for more than one operation to apply and do it in the right sequence. But in review, let's talk about the 5-step process for approaching word problems. Read carefully. With more difficult problems, read even more carefully and make sure you're focused on what you're being asked to find. We don't want to answer the wrong question. Find the important information and also the unimportant information. Knowing what you're being asked to find can help you identify the things that you need to figure that out and the things that you don't need. Choose the right operations. Emphasis on the S here, that we're looking for multiple operations that we're going to apply, and we're going to have to think about the sequence that we're going to do them. Are we going to add first and then divide? Are we going to subtract first and then multiply? What is the sequence of operations that we want to do? Once you've decided on that, you go ahead and you do them. And then finally, check to make sure that that answer sounds reasonable. That may be even more important for multi-step because you might come up with some very ridiculous answers if you do the operations in the wrong sequence. So checking that answer can help you avoid making that mistake. Go back and check your work if it doesn't sound reasonable. Example problem 1. This is kind of a classic, simple, multi-step word problem. You have $700 in a bank account. The balance in the account is reduced by paying a $125 medical bill, and then you deposit a check for $60 from a friend. How much is in the account after these transactions? How much is in the account after these transactions? Now, we had $700 in the bank account at the beginning of this problem. Then we paid a $125 bill and we deposited a check. That's really all we need here. There isn't any unneeded information really. So we can think of this as 2 steps. Step number 1 might be to pay the medical bill. So we start out with our balance and we subtract 125. And we get $575 that's left in that account. Step 2, let's put the deposit in. So we take our $575 that we have at that point, and a deposit is an addition to our balance. Paying a bill is a subtraction. So we add the $60 and we get $635. Now, when you looked at this problem, if you immediately thought, hey, I know how to do that, 700 minus 125 plus 60 equals 635, you are absolutely correct. We didn't quite break it up into these discrete steps, but you still performed 2 steps here. You subtracted 125 and then you added 60. But that is perfectly fine. That's good logic. Let's move on to problem 2. You have the gift budget of $140 and want to buy one $60 gift and 4 other gifts of equal value. How much will you be able to spend on the 4 other gifts? How much will you be able to spend on 4 other gifts, and they are going to have equal value? So that sounds like division, but we need to know how much money we have left before we can do that division. So let's find out how much money we have left. That's going to be step number 1. So we started with 140. We are going to subtract what we spend on the first gift, $60. So we have $80 left to spend on those other 4 gifts. Step number 1. Step number 2, let's do the division to find out how much each one of those equal gifts will be. So we have our dollars left, and we are going to divide that by the number of gifts. We have $80 left. We divide by 4 gifts, and each of those gifts will be $20. Answer A. 2 steps. Find out the amount left and then divide by 4. When you're done, that should kind of make sense to you. If you go back and read the problem, it should all kind of fit. Problem 3. Your yard has 6 apple trees and you expect each tree to produce 30 pounds of apples each year. If you can make an apple pie out of 2 pounds of apples, how many pies would you expect to be able to make each year? How many pies each year? That's what I'm focused on in terms of the question that's being asked here. Important information. We have 6 apple trees. That seems important. We're expecting each tree to produce 30 pounds of apples. And because we're talking about the number of pies, the amount of apples it takes to make a pie seems pretty important. So the first question that I would like to answer here is, how many pounds of apples will I have total? Pounds of apples. Let's call that step number 1. I can find that out by multiplying the number of trees by the pounds of apples that each tree will make. That is 6 trees times 30 pounds. 6 times 30 is 180 pounds of apples that I expect to collect from my trees. Step number 2, let's see how many pies I can make out of that. So I have the total pounds, and I can divide that by the pounds per pie, and that should give me my pies. So I have 180. I'm dividing by 2 pounds per pie. I can make 90 pies. Step 1, total number of apples, 6 times 30. Step number 2, take my total pounds of apples and divide by 2, because it takes 2 pounds to make 1 pie. All right, one more problem. You're responsible for ordering buses for a large group trip to a baseball game. 183 people sign up for the trip, and the buses hold 72 people. If 14 people indicated they plan to drive themselves, how many buses do you need to order? How many buses? Let's go back and highlight important information. There really isn't anything in sentence number 1 that we need, but 183 people signed up for the trip. That's important. The buses hold 72 people each, and 14 people are going to drive themselves. That means they're not going to be on the bus. So let's, as a step number 1, find out how many people are going to ride the bus. Step number 1, number of people on the bus. Or I should say buses. That's going to be 183 who signed up minus the 14 who are going to drive themselves. That leaves us with 169 people who need a bus seat. Step number 2, let's find out how many buses that takes. So if we have the number of people and we divide by the seats per bus, that should give us the number of buses. 169 people divided by 72. Get out your calculator and let's do that number, and we get 2.35 buses. Now we can't order 2.35 buses. We have to round that up because 2 buses isn't enough. We're going to need a 3rd bus to accommodate some of these people. So this is the kind of word problem where you need to do a little bit of rounding at the end in order to come up with a practical answer. So 2.35 rounds up to 3. Our answer is D, 3 buses. All right, that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful. And now it's time for some practice on your own.